Like, oh my god, hi Nashlets, and welcome to today's totally tubular episode of Noshing with Nashies. We have a totally awesome 80s version of Noshing with Nashies today. So today's video is just a tiny bit different than my usual ones. This one is not my recipe. I found this one from Tasting History with Max Miller. I will link his video and his recipe below for this. This is the 1988 school lunchroom pizza. That's right, we have actual 1980s school lunchroom pizza. And I'll actually put a picture of 1980s Nashie with her big bangs on the screen here so you can see what I looked like back in the 80s. I was there. I've had this pizza. This was a really fun walk down memory lane for me, and I totally made a couple of modifications to make it easier for those of us that cook at home. Totally. So, grab a carton of chocolate milk, tease your bangs, bust out the Aquanet so that we can get that big hair, and let's head into my kitchen and see if this is totally tubular or, totally grody. Oh my god, Nashlets, gag me with a spoon. This was totally so good. All right, Nashlets, let's go ahead and see what we're going to need for the schoolroom pizza. Three things not on camera is some cornmeal if you choose. We're going to need some water for the sauce, and then we're going to need some sugar, which is just behind everything here, so, I don't have that here. All right, so what we're going to need is some salt, some minced onion, some garlic powder. We've got some thyme, our yeast, our oregano, and our basil, some black pepper, a whole lot of shredded mozzarella cheese. We're going to need some all-purpose flour, some tomato paste. Did I say thyme? We need some dry milk. We need some vegetable oil of your choice. And my topping of choice is pepperoni here. And I just got a big brick of it from the grocery store, from the deli, and had them just slice a big tube. Because we are going to cube it up like they did on my school pizzas when I was a kid back in the 1980s. All right, Nashlets, let's get ready to try out and make this schoolroom pizza. I'm so excited. All right, Nashlets, what I have in my measuring cup here is, I have to go along with the recipe on this one because this one isn't mine, but I am going to modify as I go to make it easier for all of us. Okay, this is 1 2/3 cup of warm water in my Pyrex, and we will need 2½ teaspoons of yeast. I am just using a packet of instant dry yeast. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and let this bloom for 5 minutes while we get our dries together. Give it a little mixy, and remember not to get your water too hot. It's, basically you want it at about 105 degrees or so. So we're just going to let this bloom while I set up my KitchenAid and we get to try it together for the first time. I'm so excited. Whee! All right, Nashlets, I'm super excited because this is the first time I have loaded up my stand mixer here. This is my new KitchenAid that I unboxed earlier. And what I have in here, I got to read this to you, okay, is I've got 2½ cups of flour. You can use all-purpose or bread flour. I am using all-purpose. We have 3/4 cup of non-fat dry milk, and it came in these packages for me from Kroger. So it was about one package from there that worked out to that 3/4 cup. 2 tablespoons of sugar and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to mix this kind of on a lowish speed for about 4 minutes. Now, Mr. Max Miller in his recipe said that basically he didn't understand why the dry ingredients had to mix together for so long. My theory is because it was a super large amount of food, like a much bigger mixer, a much bigger amount of people that they were feeding. The recipe itself is much larger. That they wanted to make sure that that dry milk and that flour incorporated together, so it was distribution in the volume and the amount, so you weren't going to get pockets of your dry milk in there and cause a weird dough. So that's what I think it was. Okay, so let's try this out for the first time. I'm going to lift my bowl. There we go. It's locked into place. I've never done this, so I'm super excited. Obviously, I won't make you watch all of this, but we're going to do this for 4 minutes. Here we go, Nashlets. The first time I'm turning on my KitchenAid. So excited. It's beautiful. Okay, we're just going to let that mix together for 4 minutes while I prepare some other stuff. See you in a bit. Oh, it's so quiet compared to even my hand mixer. This is so exciting. All right, see you in a bit. All right, Nashlets, so that mixed together for about 4 minutes. Now we're going to come in with our water and our yeast mixture, which has bloomed. We're going to go ahead and pour that in there. And then we are also going to add in, let me see what it is here. It is 1.5 teaspoons of oil. And if you need more oil to oil your pan, you'll be using that too. So we're just going to add this in. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to turn this on medium speed, and we're going to mix this together for 10 minutes. I'll let you watch that for a second just because, yay, new KitchenAid. But then we'll head over and we'll make our sauce while this is doing its thing, so that'll be a lot of fun. But do make sure, like if you need to scrape down your edges and stuff as this is turning. Away we go. And that looks to be about right. Okay, so we're just going to let this go, and this is a really loose batter, remember that. So we're just going to let this go, like I said, you know, scrape down your sides, whatever you need to do. All right, Nashlets, let's head over, let's make our sauce. All right, Nashlets, here we're making the sauce. Mine is going to be a little bit different than the one that will be linked below, because I'm going to link Max Miller's video, and I'm going to link his blog post to it as well, but I'm modifying this for the home to make it a little bit easier, a little more accessible, okay? So what we've got in here is 1 can of tomato paste, which is 6 ounces. It calls for, it is a 1/2 cup plus 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, and then 1 1/3 cups of water, which I did add in there. Now we're going to come in with some seasonings. It's 1 tablespoon plus 2 teaspoons of dried onion. I always keep onions around like that. I'm just going to kind of measure like this what I like. Use onion powder if you don't have this. You can obviously use fresh onion if you want. If you want to go with exactly what he does, that's the exact recipe. All right, we're going to come in with, it is a 1/2 teaspoon of garlic powder. I prefer a little bit of extra garlic, so I have that roasted garlic powder that I like so much. And then we are coming in with a 1/4 teaspoon of pepper again. You know, season it for yourself, that's fine. But I've got this on medium heat. It's going to come up to a bubble. We're going to cook it down for like 10 minutes. Okay, 2 teaspoons of oregano and 2 teaspoons of basil. I'm going in more with like a tablespoon or so, which is basically 3 teaspoons. So that was the oregano. Got our basil. I like to go a little basil heavy. That's just a personal choice. And then it called for marjoram, but I'm not using that. But I am going to use a little bit of thyme. If you don't have any of these, use yourself a very nice Italian seasoning, and that'll work out just fine. So it's about a 1/2 teaspoon of thyme. And if you want to add a little bit of sugar to this, I'm probably going to add a teaspoon of sugar just to take the bite off of that tomato paste. But we're just going to cook this. I'll let you watch some of it in fast motion until it comes up to a bubble, and then cook it for 10 minutes. You can hear my KitchenAid going in the back. When it comes up to a bubble like this, I had it at high. Go ahead and cut it back to medium on your stove. That's 5 on my stove. Let's cook this bubbling gently for about 10 minutes. Stir occasionally. I'm going to go prep some more stuff, Nashlets. Oh, and preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Let's get that puppy up there to that 400 degrees. All right, Nashlets, our batter / dough is done here. It is, in fact, supposed to be incredibly liquidy. Let's see if I can kind of get a shot of that. There you can see it's very liquidy. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is move my KitchenAid, move my sheet pan over here, and we'll talk about how to do this crust. All right, Nashlets, so according to Max Miller's recipe, basically what you want to do is have a 1/2 sheet pan. That's the size that's standard for households. Obviously, they use the big ones in places like schools and bakeries and things like that, but I've got my 1/2 sheet pan here. Now, you can grease it up with some vegetable oil and then put some cornmeal on top of it if you want to, or you can do like I did. I have non-stick aluminum foil. This just makes it easier, and I sprayed some non-stick spray on it, and we're going to pour out our pourable batter here. Okay, and what we are going to do is stretch this to the edges of our sheet pan using a spatula, and he said it could need to rest for a little bit of time in order to kind of loosen up and make it to those edges. He said that he felt like it wasn't going to cover the whole sheet pan, so if you're having that feeling when doing this, it's not just a you thing, so don't worry about it. because this is a really strange crust. I have to admit, this is the first time I have ever worked with any kind of liquid pizza dough or liquid batter, so we're just going to spread it to the edges. Again, do make sure that you have that oven preheated to 400 degrees. And I know in his, I believe he does it at 475. I just don't think we need that. I think at most we'll need 415 for a home oven for the way that we're going to be baking this. So this is just my advice as someone that has been a home cook for a really, really long time. And I'm seeing this is actually spreading really nicely. And you can take it all the way up to the edges, or you can keep it just slightly away from the edges if you wish as well. But that non-stick aluminum foil is going to come in, I think, really handy with just how liquidy this is. Just make sure that you don't have any holes in your batter. And I'll show you what I mean. See how I can kind of move that like that. All right, so I'm going to actually let this rest here for just a minute to make sure that it has some time to relax. In the meantime, I'm looking at my recipe here. In the meantime, again, I have that 400-degree oven going. So it says spread in greased cornmeal pan, bake for 10 minutes, okay? And then we're gonna pull it out, and that's when we're gonna get started. So I'm gonna let this chill out for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes or so like that, while I cut up my pepperoni. Then we're gonna stick this in for 10 minutes. I'll come back and tell you when I'm doing that. Our sauce here has cooked for 10 minutes. I'm basically just turning off the heat. I'm gonna let it chill out while we bake our pizza crust and all that kind of stuff. All right, Nashlets, I did let it relax for a bit, and that really worked out. It really spread out super nice, so that 5-10 minutes of relaxation on this liquid dough is perfection. I'm gonna stick it in a 400-degree oven for 10 minutes. I will see you then. All right, Nashlets, I baked it at 400 degrees for 10 minutes, and it came out exactly like I would want it to pre-baked here, you know, that par bake. And I went ahead and put a spatula underneath it just to make sure it wasn't sticking to my sheet pan or anything. Worked out absolutely perfectly. So now it is time to go on with our dressing of our pizza here. Now, what it says to do is put 1.5 cups of cheese on the bottom and then mix the sauce in on top, and then we come back in with more cheese and then whatever toppings you want, and then we'll rebake it. So it's about 5.5 cups of mozzarella cheese. I'll be honest, I've got more like 8 cups here. I like an extra cheesy pizza. But what we're going to do is we are just going to put down a small amount of cheese on the bottom here to mix in with the sauce. That's actually going to create kind of a gummy base, which is not a bad thing. So let's do that. Oh, and you can totally mix the cheese in, 1.5 cups of cheese, directly into your sauce to make this easier. He talks about that in his video. I did watch that. All right, then we're coming in with our sauce here. I can tell you right now that the sauce actually smells really, really good. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to spread it as much as we can, because it's not a whole lot of sauce, but it's not supposed to be, because again, this is a schoolroom pizza. You know, they didn't tend to be super heavy dressed, but if your cheese mixes in, don't be worrying about that. That's perfectly fine. Also, these pizzas didn't have an edge, so just get it right up to the edge there. Make a mess, it's okay. This is all about school pizza, nostalgia, and some fun. I'm loving getting to do this different kind of video with you all, Nashlets. This is a bit of an adventure for me, and it is so much fun. Oh, that actually mixed together pretty easy peasy. I'm just using a nice wooden spoon here. Not a lot of sauce, but it covers the whole pizza, you know, perfectly, just like I would want it to. And of course, naturally, you don't have to put down the base layer of the cheese. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just make it easier for yourself. Nothing, because we're cooking this at home, nothing is going to be exactly like it was, you know. But I want to see how this dry milk powder works out in this. So I'm just going to top it with the rest of my cheese here, and I'll show you what I did here. I just bought a big tube of pepperoni at the deli, and I cut it into, yeah, I'm just going to leave that there. I cut it into squares, rectangles like this, and so that's what we're going to dress our pizza with. I'll let you watch that in fast motion. All right, right, Nashlets, our pizza here is all dressed, and I gotta say, even though I loaded it with way more pepperoni and probably more cheese than the school did, it's looking very much like a school pizza. I am digging doing this, and I totally didn't eat any cheese or pepperoni behind the scenes of the camera at all. Okay, so what we are going to do now is we are going to stick this back in that 400-degree oven from anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes when this gets golden brown on top. So just keep an eye on it. I say don't open the oven until at least 8 minutes to check on it, okay? Basically is what we're going to do. I'll let you know exactly how long that took me. When this comes out, it's going back into the oven. See you in a bit, Nashlets. All right, Nashlets, our school pizza is finished here, and something I happened to notice about halfway into this second bake, which took me 15 minutes in my oven to get it nice and, you know, like this golden brown on the top, probably because of the amount of pepperoni on there. But about halfway through the cooking, it started to smell just like I remember school pizza, and that was such a wild thing. I'm not going to do the taste test here. If you want to see that, you can go into the comments, and I will link a short of me and Mr. Nashies taste testing this so that you can see if it tastes like schoolroom pizza, but I can tell you it sure looks like and smells like school pizza. And I'm going to go ahead and link Max Miller's video and his blog post in the description, plus my modified recipe. Thank you so much for joining me for this extremely nostalgic edition of Noshing with Nashies. And remember, if you come to a fork in the road, pick it up and have a nosh with Nashies. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Consider becoming a member and check out that amazing recipe video on your screen. I'll see you in the next one, Nashlets. Bye!